My name is Samuel Reyes, and I'm 34 years old now, but my story really begins when I was 28. Back then, I was working as an electrician in a small town in southern Texas, living a life that seemed content enough on the surface, but deep down, I felt like something was missing. It wasn't that I didn't have ambition, because I did, but it was more that I didn't know where I fit in this world. I thought I had found my place when I met Jessica Cruz. She was a nurse at the local clinic, beautiful, driven, and more ambitious than anyone I'd ever met. I could see the fire in her eyes, the hunger for something bigger than the small town we were stuck in. And I thought to myself, this is it. I've found the one person I'll spend the rest of my life with. When Jessica decided to go back to school to get her nursing degree, I didn't think twice. I loved her. And to me, that meant supporting her dreams no matter what. I worked double shifts, sometimes even 3 jobs, just to help her get through school. All of it. Every spare penny I could scrape together went toward her tuition, books, and any other expenses that came with her studies. I believed in her potential more than anything else, and it was worth it to me. The way I saw it, she was going places, and I was willing to sacrifice my own happiness for the chance to see her reach her goals. For years, my life revolved around making sure she had everything she needed. The weekends were spent at the construction sites, sometimes working so late I could barely stay awake on the ride home. I didn't mind. I was doing it all for her. When I wasn't working, I was helping her study, listening to her talk about all the things she was learning, trying to push her to be even better than she thought she could be. I did everything I could to make her life easier, to make sure she had the space to focus on her future. I gave up my own. I didn't go out with friends anymore. I didn't take any time for myself. I was the support she needed, and in my mind, that was enough. I didn't need anything more. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing changes. She was coming home later, spending more time with her classmates, her new friends. She was always talking about them, about their futures, about their ambitions, about everything that didn't include me. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it was just the stress of school, the pressure she was under. But then, the distance between us grew. Conversations became few and far between. She'd be on her phone more than ever, and when I asked who she was texting, she would just brush me off. It wasn't that she was rude or mean, it was more like she was becoming a stranger to me. I couldn't place it, but I could feel her slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Then came the night she handed me the divorce papers. It was the night she graduated. She came home from the ceremony, glowing, holding her degree in one hand, a smile on her face. I thought it was going to be one of those moments where we celebrated everything we had been through together, all the sacrifices I had made for her. Instead, she handed me a piece of paper with my name at the bottom. Divorce papers. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't even react at first. I just sat there staring at her, unsure of what to say. She was calm, almost too calm, as she explained that we had grown apart, that I wasn't enough for her anymore, that she needed someone who could match her ambition. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg her to stay. I just took the papers, signed my name, and pushed them back toward her. This was it. The end. The person I had sacrificed everything for was gone, and she was never coming back. But the truth was, I didn't even know who she had become anymore. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months, and I saw a woman I didn't recognize, a woman who had everything she wanted, and I was no longer part of the equation. The next few days were a blur. I didn't fight, didn't plead with her to stay. What was the point? I had seen this coming for a while now, even if I didn't want to admit it to myself. I packed up my things that night, methodically separating what was mine from what was hers. The apartment we had shared for 5 years, the place where we had built our life together, was now nothing more than an empty shell. The furniture, the kitchenware, the photos on the walls, everything we had accumulated as a couple was hers now. I wasn't going to take it with me. I wasn't going to fight over material things. When the last of my belongings were in the back of my truck, I sat for a moment on the edge of the couch, staring at the space we had shared. It was hard not to feel a pang of regret, but I had to remind myself of the truth. The truth that she had already moved on. She didn't need me anymore. She had outgrown me, and all I was now was a footnote in the story she had decided to write for herself. I called my brother Chris and told him what had happened. He was shocked, and in typical Chris fashion, he immediately offered me a place to stay. "Come to Dallas," he said. "Stay with me for a while. You can figure things out there." I didn't even hesitate. What was there for me in that town anymore? My life had been built around Jessica and her dreams, and now she was gone. It was time for me to figure out who I was without her, to carve out a future that was mine and mine alone. The next morning, I left. The drive to Dallas felt long, endless, but also liberating in a way. The farther I got from the life I had known, the more I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. I wasn't looking back anymore. Staying with Chris was a temporary solution, but it was what I needed. I got a job with a local electrical company just to keep busy and make some money. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I was rebuilding, brick by brick. There was something satisfying about working with my hands again, about doing something that didn't involve worrying about someone else's future for once. In the evenings, after a long day's work, I would sit in Chris's guest room, staring at the ceiling, trying to find the words to make sense of everything that had happened. The loneliness was heavy at first. I would sometimes lie awake at night, remembering the woman I thought I would grow old with, the way she used to look at me, the way we used to laugh together. But those memories were clouded by everything that had come after. The distance, the coldness, the way she had pulled away until there was nothing left but a shell of what we once were. I tried not to dwell on it, but it was hard. There were moments when I still missed her, when I would hear a song on the radio or see a couple walking down the street, and I'd remember what it felt like to have someone by your side, sharing everything with you. But as time went on, I started to change. The numbness faded, replaced by a quiet determination. I started working on side projects for people, doing electrical work on the weekends. The extra money was good, but more than that, it felt like I was reclaiming something that had been taken from me. I wasn't just fixing wires anymore. I was fixing myself. Slowly, I started to gain confidence again. Word spread about my work, and before I knew it, I was turning down jobs because I simply couldn't keep up with the demand. One night, after finishing a project for a local restaurant, I sat in my truck and stared at the business card I had just had printed up, Reyes Electric, licensed electrician. It was small, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I had done this on my own, without anyone's help, and it felt damn good. I realized in that moment that I didn't need Jessica to be successful. I didn't need anyone to validate me anymore. I had built my own life from scratch, and I was proud of it. Over the next year, things started to fall into place. I took on bigger projects, hired a couple of guys to work with me, and even got my own truck. Reyes Electric wasn't just a dream anymore. It was becoming a reality. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my life again. Looking back, I realized that the day Jessica handed me those divorce papers had been the turning point. It had felt like the end of everything, but in reality, it was just the beginning. It had forced me to confront who I was, what I wanted, and what I was willing to sacrifice. And the truth was, I was done sacrificing for someone else's dreams. It was time to make my own dreams a reality. The hardest part was over. I had survived, and now I was thriving. Jessica thought she had left me behind, but she had unknowingly set me free. Free to become someone I had never imagined I could be. The first few months after I left Texas were tough, no doubt. But as time passed, I began to realize that something inside me had shifted. When I was in that tiny apartment, surrounded by reminders of a life I'd worked so hard to build with Jessica, I had felt defeated. But now, in Chris's guest room, with nothing but a few boxes and my tools, I began to feel a strange sense of possibility. I was no longer tethered to the life I thought I was supposed to live. I was free, and as much as I hated admitting it, I was beginning to understand that freedom was more valuable than anything Jessica had ever given me. I spent my days working hard, taking on as many electrical jobs as I could handle. Some were small repairs, others bigger projects, upgrading electrical systems in old homes, fixing wiring in office buildings. Every job was a step toward rebuilding myself. I didn't have time to dwell on the past anymore. Every moment was dedicated to moving forward, proving to myself that I could do it without her. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. Slowly, the confidence that had been chipped away over the years started to come back. By the end of that first year, I had saved enough money to start my own company, Reyes Electric. It wasn't a huge leap. It was just a business card, a website, and a dream. But it felt like I was taking back control. I wasn't just working for someone else anymore. I was building something that was truly mine. I spent late nights updating my website, creating business plans, and learning the ins and outs of running a company. I kept my head down and focused on one thing: getting my business off the ground. I remember the first real job I landed. A local restaurant owner needed a new electrical system, and he was willing to take a chance on a guy who wasn't backed by a big company or fancy credentials. It wasn't the most glamorous project, but it was a start. I poured every ounce of effort I had into it, working nights and weekends to finish it on time. The moment I completed that job and saw the restaurant owner smile as he flipped the switch and the lights turned on, I knew that I was on the right path. That was the moment Reyes Electric started to become real, and it felt incredible. With that first success came others. Word of mouth spread, and I was able to hire a couple of guys to help with the growing workload. Things weren't easy by any stretch, but they were starting to get better. I bought a second truck for the company, invested in more tools, and started taking on bigger projects. Every new job felt like another small victory, another affirmation that I wasn't just some guy who had been left behind. I was becoming someone important, someone who had built something from nothing. As Reyes Electric grew, so did my sense of purpose. I wasn't just doing it for myself anymore. I started thinking about the people I could hire, the families I could support, and the impact I could make on the community. There was no more feeling like I was stuck in the shadows of someone else's success. I was the one building this, and I was doing it the right way. But as the business began to pick up speed, so did the surprises. One afternoon, about 2 years after I had left Jessica, I got a call that I never thought I would receive. It was her. Her voice was shakier than I remembered, and for a moment I felt a pang of something, maybe sympathy, maybe curiosity. She asked if we could meet. She said it was important. I didn't know what to think. After everything, I wasn't sure what she wanted from me, but curiosity got the best of me, and I agreed to meet her at a cafe. When I walked into that cafe and saw her sitting at the table, it was hard not to notice how much she had changed. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She was dressed casually, her face worn and tired. The Jessica I had known was gone, replaced by someone who seemed defeated. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Sam," she said, her voice low, almost apologetic. "I should have never left you. I was selfish, and now I'm struggling." I listened as she told me about her life after the divorce, about how things with David had fallen apart, how she was dealing with financial trouble, and how she couldn't find a job because of the mess she'd made of her finances. She wasn't asking for pity. She was asking for help. I don't know what I expected, but this wasn't it. The woman who had once stood in front of me with divorce papers was now sitting here, asking me for help. She had hit rock bottom, and now she needed me to bail her out. "Why should I help you?" I asked. The words came out before I even thought them through. "You left me when I had nothing. Now you want me to fix everything again?" Her eyes welled up with tears. "I was wrong, Sam. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. I need help. Please, I'm drowning." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old feelings: guilt, compassion, maybe even a sense of duty. But as I looked at her, I realized something. The woman I had loved wasn't coming back. She had already made her choices, and now she was asking for my help as though she had never hurt me. I shook my head. "I can't do that, Jessica. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I just felt numb. The person I was today had no room for the person she needed me to be. "I can't fix this for you," I said quietly. "I've already built my life. You need to figure this out on your own, just like I did when you walked away." She didn't say anything else, just sat there, tears streaming down her face. I stood up, paid for my coffee, and walked out of that cafe. I had built my life from the ground up. I didn't need her, and I didn't owe her anything. What I had gained through my struggles was mine. I wasn't going to let her, someone who had walked away from me, tear that down. The walk back to my truck felt different than I expected. There was no weight of anger, no bitterness, just a strange sense of finality. I had imagined that seeing Jessica again would stir something in me. Maybe regret, maybe a desire to reconnect. But as I walked away from that cafe, I realized that I didn't feel any of those things. The years I spent helping her chase her dreams had drained me, and now finally I could see things for what they were. She hadn't been the person I thought I knew, and maybe I hadn't been the person I thought I was either. But that's the thing about time. It has a way of showing you the truth, even when you're not ready to see it. As I sat in my truck and started the engine, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The life I had been so determined to build for her, for us, had fallen apart. But in its place, something far more valuable had taken root. I had spent so long focusing on her needs, her success, that I had forgotten to take care of myself. Now looking at everything I had accomplished, Ray's Electric, the employees I had hired, the reputation I had built in the community, I realized that all of it had come from a place of necessity. Necessity to survive, to prove I was more than just a guy who worked in construction. I had done it, and I had done it without anyone's help. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I couldn't shake the conversation with Jessica, but I knew deep down that I had made the right choice. I wasn't going to go back to that place where I was constantly giving, constantly sacrificing for someone who had no intention of ever doing the same. I had learned that lesson the hard way. She had left me without a second thought, and now she was back, asking for help as if nothing had happened, as if the years of sacrifice had meant nothing. But to me, they did mean something. They meant everything. Those years had taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. They had shown me my worth, and I wasn't about to let anyone, not even her, take that away. The following week was business as usual. Meetings, job sites, employee check-ins. But something was different. I was more focused, more present than I had been in a long time. Maybe it was the clarity I gained after meeting Jessica. Maybe it was the realization that I had built something I could be proud of. Something that wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval or validation. Reyes Electric was my life now, and it wasn't just a business. It was a reflection of who I had become. I had made it through the hardest parts of my life without her, and now I was thriving. The freedom to live for myself, to create something that was truly mine, was worth more than any relationship could ever be. Then, about 6 months later, something unexpected happened. I received a call from Chris one evening, and his tone immediately caught my attention. "Hey, Sam," he said, "I just wanted to let you know. I heard some news today about Jessica. She's moving to Arizona." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Arizona? I hadn't heard from her since that day at the cafe, and honestly, I hadn't expected to. I thought she would fade into the background of my life, just another chapter I could close and forget. But hearing that she was moving made me pause. Not because I wanted to get involved again, but because it marked the final chapter in a story I had once thought would never end. "I'm glad she's doing what's best for her," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Chris paused for a moment before speaking again. "Yeah, me too. She's been through a lot. But Sam, I just want you to know, what you've built, this company, everything you've done, it's impressive. I think it's time you start seeing that. It's time you start seeing yourself as the success you really are." His words hit harder than I expected. I had spent so much time running from the past, from the pain of losing Jessica, that I had forgotten to recognize what I had actually achieved. Chris was right. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Ray's Electric wasn't just a business. It was my legacy. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't letting go of Jessica. It was letting go of the version of myself that I had been when I was with her. I had been so focused on her dreams, her goals, that I had lost sight of my own. But now I could finally see them clearly. And it felt good. That night, as I sat in my office looking out at the city skyline, I made a decision. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on the past. I had built a future, and it was mine. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even the woman I once loved, take that away from me. I had become someone I could be proud of, someone who had done the hard work, who had fought to make something real. And that, in the end, was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. The months after that conversation with Chris marked a turning point in my life. It was like a fog had lifted, and for the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. The life I had built, the company I had grown, and the person I had become, all of it was a testament to my resilience, my hard work, and my refusal to let the past define me. Every time I looked at the name Reyes Electric on my business cards, it reminded me of how far I had come, how much I had overcome. But more importantly, it reminded me that I didn't need anyone else to validate me anymore. I had done this on my own, and that was something I could be proud of. Reyes Electric continued to grow. What started as a small, one-man operation had blossomed into a well-respected company with over 30 employees. We took on bigger projects, worked with commercial clients, and even expanded into new markets. I didn't just want to be known as the guy who could fix a wiring issue. I wanted to be the guy who could transform a business, help a community grow, and create lasting change. And as the company grew, so did my sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about building something that mattered. But with success came new challenges. I had to hire more staff, implement systems and processes, and keep up with the increasing demands of the business. The days became longer, and I spent more time in meetings, managing people, and handling the logistical side of things. At times, I found myself missing the hands-on work, the feeling of completing a job with my own two hands. But then I'd remind myself that this was the next step. This was what I had worked for. To grow, to lead, to build something sustainable. I started to realize that I had created more than just a business. I had built a team, a family of sorts, who depended on me and who trusted me to take them to the next level. That was an accomplishment in itself. There was no feeling quite like the one I had when one of my employees told me they had bought their first home thanks to the steady paycheck I had given them. It reminded me of why I did this, why I worked so hard. It wasn't just for myself anymore. It was for the people who believed in me, who had worked beside me, and who were now reaping the rewards of our collective effort. Still, there were moments when the past would creep in. I'd think about Jessica, wonder where she was, what she was doing. But those thoughts came less frequently, and when they did, they didn't sting as much. I had let go of the part of me that had been obsessed with her approval, the part of me that had felt like I needed her to validate my worth. I didn't need her anymore, and I was finally at peace with that. Then one day, a surprise phone call came in. I was in my office, going over some paperwork when I saw the number flash on my screen. I didn't recognize it, but something told me I needed to answer. I did. And there, on the other end, was a voice I hadn't heard in years. Sam? It was Jessica. I felt my heart stop for a second. Hearing her voice again after all this time was a jolt, a reminder of everything we had been through, everything I had tried so hard to forget. She sounded different, tired, older, and almost fragile in a way. I didn't expect you to answer, she said softly, but I needed to talk to you. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me was still processing the shock of hearing from her. The woman who had left me, who had hurt me so deeply, was now reaching out. After everything, after all the years of silence, she was asking for my attention. What is it, Jessica? I finally asked, my voice steady but guarded. She hesitated. I don't know how to explain this. I guess I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving you. For taking you for granted. For thinking I could do this on my own when I should have known that you were the one person who would always be there for me. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. I had already forgiven her, in my own way, years ago. But forgiveness didn't mean I needed to invite her back into my life. I had moved on, and I was no longer the person who would sacrifice everything for someone else's dreams. I've moved on, Jessica, I said, my voice soft but firm. I've built a life I'm proud of, and it's not one that includes you. You made your choices, and I made mine. I've forgiven you, but that doesn't mean we have to go back to the way things were. I don't need anything from you anymore. I'm finally living for myself. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could tell she was processing my words, trying to understand what I was saying. And then finally, she spoke again. I understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I just, I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And with that, the conversation ended. She didn't ask for anything else. She didn't try to convince me to come back. And as I sat there staring at the phone in my hand, I realized something. She had finally let go too. I had spent so many years wondering if I would ever get closure, if I would ever feel like I had truly moved on. But now, in that moment, I understood. The closure wasn't something Jessica could give me. It was something I had to give myself. And I had. I put my phone down, leaned back in my chair, and looked out at the city skyline. Ray's Electric was doing better than ever. I had created something from nothing, and now I was living the life I had always wanted. I had rebuilt myself, and I had become someone I could be proud of. Jessica's call had been a reminder that the past was exactly that, past. It was no longer a part of my present or my future. And with that final piece of closure, I was ready to keep moving forward, stronger than ever. The years after that phone call with Jessica were a blur of success and growth. Reyes Electric kept expanding, and with every new contract, every new project, I could feel the foundation I had built beneath me growing stronger. I didn't just want to be a success. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to prove to myself and to the world that everything I had worked for meant something. And as the business flourished, so did my sense of purpose. But even as everything around me was moving in the right direction, there were still moments when I felt the weight of what had happened. Not because I longed for the past, but because I had to constantly remind myself that I wasn't the same person I had been when Jessica and I were together. I wasn't the same guy who had put someone else's dreams above his own. I had learned to put myself first, to prioritize my own growth, and in doing so, I had created something real. It wasn't always easy, though. Being a business owner came with its own set of challenges. I had to make tough decisions every day: who to hire, how to handle the finances, what direction to take next. But it was also incredibly rewarding. I was no longer the guy working late into the night on construction sites just to pay the bills. I was the guy running the show, making decisions that impacted not just my future, but the future of my employees too. And that responsibility didn't weigh on me the way I had once thought it would. It felt right. It felt like I was where I was meant to be. One of the things that kept me going was the people I had around me. I wasn't alone anymore. My team had become like a second family to me. Every day, we worked together to take Ray's Electric to new heights. And the best part? I wasn't doing it just for myself anymore. I was doing it for them too. I had employees who depended on me to lead them, to show them that hard work and determination could pay off. I had people who had bought into my vision and trusted me to guide them. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I didn't have to do this alone. Chris, my brother, had been with me every step of the way, offering support when I needed it most. There were times when I felt like I was drowning in the weight of it all. But Chris always had a way of bringing me back down to earth. He reminded me of where I had started, how far I had come, and how much I had to be proud of. He was my rock, and I knew I could always count on him. But despite all the success, there were still moments when I felt an empty space inside me, a reminder that something was missing. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there were times when I looked around at the life I had built and realized that, for all the accomplishments, something still felt incomplete. It wasn't about money or status. It was about connection, about love. I had put so much of my focus on the business, on proving my worth, that I had neglected the one thing that truly mattered: relationships. It was a hard truth to face, but I knew it was one I had to confront. I had spent so much time rebuilding my career and proving my success, but I had overlooked the importance of having people to share that success with. I didn't need Jessica to be a part of my life again, but I did need to find someone who could walk alongside me, someone who understood the value of hard work, of loyalty, and of building something real. And then one day, it happened. I met someone. Her name was Claire, and she was the type of woman I had never expected to meet. She wasn't looking for someone to take care of her or to build her dreams around. She had her own life, her own ambitions. But when we met, there was an instant connection. She was smart, funny, and down to earth. She didn't care about the success I had built or the money I made. She just saw me for who I was, a man who had worked hard, who had learned from his past, and who was finally in a place where he was ready to give and receive love. As our relationship grew, I realized something profound. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I had already proven to myself that I was capable of achieving everything I wanted. And now I had someone by my side who understood me, who didn't want anything from me other than to share our lives together. It was the kind of partnership I had always hoped for, but never thought I would find. Looking back on everything I had been through, the pain, the heartbreak, the years of struggle, I could see now that it had all been part of the process. Every sacrifice, every failure, every moment of doubt had led me to this point. And as I sat in the office that I had built, looking out at the skyline, I realized that I had finally found what I had been searching for. Success, yes, but more than that, peace. I had finally become the man I was meant to be. I had built a life that was mine, and for the first time in years, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. As the years passed, I found myself stepping into a new chapter, one that was less about proving myself and more about enjoying the life I had built. Reyes Electric was thriving, and so was I. The company was now a staple in the community, a trusted name in the industry, and I had finally reached a point where I could take a step back and appreciate what I had accomplished. The days of endless struggle, of working myself into the ground just to make ends meet, felt like a distant memory. And though I had made peace with my past, I knew that I hadn't done it alone. Claire had been the anchor I didn't know I needed. Our relationship had blossomed in ways I never expected. At first, I had been wary of letting someone new into my life, afraid of opening up again. But Claire was different. She didn't want to change me, she simply accepted me for who I was. It was a strange feeling, to be seen so completely by someone, yet it felt natural. She had her own dreams, her own aspirations, but we shared a quiet understanding, a shared commitment to building something real together. With her by my side, I began to feel like I could finally breathe again. She encouraged me to take time for myself, to stop being so hard on myself all the time. "You've earned this," she would say, when I'd start overthinking or stressing about the next big project. "You've worked hard for everything you have. Now it's time to enjoy it." I took her advice to heart. Over the last couple of years, I had started to slow down. I wasn't staying late at the office every night. I wasn't constantly worrying about the next contract or the next hire. I made time for Claire. We traveled when we could, taking weekends away just to reconnect. We laughed more, relaxed more, and in the process, I realized that there was more to life than work. I could still have my career, still be proud of the company I had built, but it didn't have to consume me. And through all of this, I continued to grow as a person. I became more involved in the community, offering mentorship to younger entrepreneurs and helping with local charities. I started to understand that my success wasn't just about financial gain or business deals, it was about the impact I had on others. Reyes Electric had become a platform for me to give back, to create opportunities for people who were where I had been all those years ago, struggling to make ends meet, trying to figure out how to build a life that mattered. But there was still something in the back of my mind, something I hadn't fully let go of. Jessica. I had thought about her less and less, but there were moments when I wondered what had happened to her, how she was doing. Had she finally found the stability she was looking for? Was she happy? After all, she had been a huge part of my life for so long, and though the pain of losing her had faded, the questions still lingered. And then one afternoon, out of nowhere, I received an email. It was from her. I stared at the subject line for a long time. "I need to apologize. I didn't know what to think." After all these years, after everything we had been through, Jessica was reaching out again. I opened the email and read through it. She explained how much she had changed over the years, how much she had learned about herself, and how she regretted the way she had treated me. She said she had made peace with her mistakes and felt it was time to reach out and apologize for the hurt she had caused. As I read her words, I felt a mix of emotions. There was no anger, no resentment, just a quiet acknowledgement of the past. I had forgiven her long ago, but hearing her say it out loud, Hearing her take responsibility for her actions brought a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to process it all. When I finally did, I sent a simple reply: "Thank you for your message. I appreciate your honesty. I've moved on, but I wish you nothing but the best." That was it. No grand reconciliation, no rekindling of any kind. I didn't need that. What I needed was closure, and I had it. Jessica's apology had been for her, not for me. And that was okay. I was at peace with everything now. As the years continued to unfold, I found myself more grounded than I had ever been. Ray's Electric continued to grow, but now it was more about maintaining what we had built, focusing on the people around me, and enjoying the life I had worked so hard to create. Claire and I were planning our future together. No more rushing, no more anxiety about what came next. We were content, in the truest sense of the word. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running towards something. I wasn't chasing success or approval anymore. I had it. I was living it. Every day, I woke up knowing that the life I had created was mine, and no one could take that from me. Life isn't just about chasing success or proving your worth to others. It's about finding balance and peace within yourself. Build your life around your values, not the expectations of others. Take risks, work hard, but don't lose sight of who you are in the process. Relationships matter, but never sacrifice your happiness for someone else's dreams. Learn from your past, but don't let it define your future. Trust yourself, embrace growth, and remember that true success comes from within. Surround yourself with people who support and uplift you, and always take the time to appreciate how far you've come.